Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert, coming to you live with another. It's not Tuesday, but it's tea time. I'm doing it early because I have other commitments tomorrow. But look at how pretty this is. And look, it's like Turkish tea, and it comes in this beautiful set that my girlfriend got me for my birthday. Yum. And inside it's not Turkish tea, but it's mint tea, but still, woo. She got me a whole set. Isn't that cute? I just thought I had to share this on tea time. But enough of the show and tell. This is not a sales. Well, it's about sales, but I'm not selling that to you. Although Gary Vee does say that, Whatnot and TikTok Shop is the future of retail. I just want you to know that. And I'm convinced of it myself as well. Okay, so I've been having my clients go into amazing, they're getting the meetings, they're able to open doors, they're being given the appointments, which is the hardest thing in this, world of AI and this infobesity of there's just too much information. And they're able to go in and get the appointments, they're able to get the attention, they're able to keep the attention, and then they get into the sales call, and guess what? They come out with no results. They come out with no appointment, no next call. It's kind of like, leave it with us. And when I either listen to the call because they send me the recordings, or we go through what happened, I can see that they've lost the control of the sales call, of the sales conversation. So I'm going to give you exact steps of how not to let that happen to you, because you spend so much time, money, energy to try to get that corporate meeting with that corporate buyer. It is so hard to get. It costs so much money to get that meeting that it is a crime to be wasting that opportunity. And when you let the buyer take control, you can't get your results met, which is to close the sale or to close it faster or the information to close it. Okay. So let's start with, first of all, you do not pitch to anyone in the room. You do not come to a meeting unless the decision makers are there. Now, you can say that for really high level decision makers, they're never going to be there at the first meeting. I'll buy that, but you'll have to do a partial. You'll have to make sure, first of all, that if they're not the actual decision maker, that at least they're part of the buying team or the committee, or they're an influencer of the purchase. If they're not actually going to be signing it, they're actually be influencing the person. And then you'll have to do exactly everything that I'm saying to keep the control and set up the meeting with the actual buyer once you've had the first meeting with the influencer. But if the person you're meeting with is neither an influencer nor a decision maker, you have no business meeting with them unless you just want to network, and in which case you should be networking with your actual influencer or your buyer. Okay. So get check signers or no meeting is the first rule before you even go in, to take control of the sales conversation, because that's a way of taking control, is saying, I'm sorry, I don't pitch to people who are not my target. Like, I say that, right? Okay. So then the next way to keep control, to take control and keep control, is set up the right amount of time. So unless you have at least 60 minutes to 90 minutes, one, they're not taking you seriously enough. It's not a big enough need. You're not an important enough vendor. And you won't have enough time. You're going to run out of time. Now, am I saying, let's say it's a huge account, it's a huge potential, and they're only giving you half an hour to walk away from it? No, but just know that you're not going to be able to close that deal. You're not going to, it's for the amount of revenue that you're expecting, depending on what you sell. And the kind of businesses that I work with sell hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of services. Well, they need to give you at least an hour to see if they're going to spend six figures, right? So, because one thing that I'm trying to get people away from is the meet and greet. Like, that just serves no purpose. That really serves no purpose. I want you to have at least 40 minutes to 60 minutes if you're going to be presenting or talking to someone. Now, I recently had a huge company, have a meeting with me, and they only gave me half an hour. but it went longer, and some of them had to get off the call and others didn't. But I had enough control of the meeting to be able to get what I needed. But it wasn't the kind of meeting where I was actually going to be selling them, hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of service or product. This was, I was just going to speak to one of their groups for, much less than hundreds and thousands of dollars. So if you're selling high, value products, you should be given at least 60 minutes. So set the right amount of time, at least ask for it. All right. So the next one is set the proper agenda before you get there. So be in agreement to say, we're having a discussion to see how I can help, and make sure that you position it that way. Make sure you know that they know that you're going to be having a conversation to see if there's a good fit and how you can help. Now, if they ask you for an agenda, you can send a loose agenda, saying that you're going to find out about their goals and what their expectations are, what their hurdles have been, and how, case studies of how you've helped people in the same position. Now, you can do a capability presentation, but I prefer that you don't. I prefer that you ask the 5 conversation questions that I usually teach my clients to do. Now, instead, if they're really insisting on having a capability presentation from you and they've specifically asked for it, keep it really short. And there's a whole formula to doing a capability presentation, but keep it really short. Keep it achievement-based, focused on their industry and numbers of what results you deliver and problems. And then go into the 5 questions is what I would like to say. And if there's no agenda at all, I would like for you to start with is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions, right? So, and that's the next way to take control is number 4 is ask, don't tell. So as soon as you get into the meeting, one, they know they're expecting you to lead because you're going to say, we're going to mutually find out about each other so that I can see how I can help you and whether I can help you. And then the next is when you're in the meeting and you take the lead right away. So let's say they say, okay, tell us about yourself. Then you can say, well, before I do that, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions around your needs to see how I can tailor my response? And everybody always says yes to that. Like, I have never, ever, ever had a company refuse to speak first. In fact, people want to go first. In fact, people want to talk. I mean, and again, I deployed this just last week with one of the largest companies in the world, and their, completely jaded selling team, like that, their buyer team, I mean. So it works. And if they say, no, we'd rather hear what you do, we'd rather you go first, then you could say, well, here are a couple of my assumptions around, what the issues you're facing. So you answer the questions yourself and then you check with it. So I'll go through some of the questions and you'll find out what I'm talking about. So the next way, the 5th way to take control of the sales conversation is to actually ask the questions, but don't go off script. Don't let them deviate into what you're not asking about. So the first question we always ask is, what is the vision with respect to why you're there? Like, what is the vision with respect to your marketing? What is the vision with respect to your HR? What is the vision with respect to your retention? Whatever it is that you do, you ask them, what is the vision with respect to that area of their company? And then, if they didn't want to speak first, you could then say, typically companies in your industry, and based on my research of your annual reports and, press releases, this is your company's vision. Is that right? Can you validate that? And how do you feel about that? Or you can ask them to populate more data around that vision. And then, so the next question is, well, why haven't you got there? What's the obstacle? And then again, you warm them into starting to answer the the questions. What do you think is the obstacle? What has been the obstacle? So then you could, go right into the questions, even if they weren't willing to answer your questions at the beginning and they wanted to hear from you first. And then, so it's the vision, the obstacle, and then what is the cost and the consequence? Like, actually come up with dollar figures. So how much is it costing them not to be able to get that vision or not to be able to overcome that obstacle? And then the next is it okay if I tell you how I think we could help? And then you take them through a top line, 3 or 4 steps of how you would help them. And then the last question is this what you need? Is there a fit with what we do and how we do it and what you need? And then you overcome the objections, because you haven't talked about price yet. And then the next, if everything's aligned, and then the next question is, can we schedule a co-creation of scope of work meeting together with all the key stakeholders so that we can actually put a number to the to this project? So then that's what you hold with them. So don't go off script. So one of the things that I see a lot that's happening with my clients is they are lulled into first they can't get the answer from the buyer, and the buyer goes off on a tangent and they're lulled into listening to the person. So that brings me to my 6th and final way to take control of the sales conversation. If you know that your question is not being answered, or they have gone off on a completely different tangent, that you want to take control back of the conversation, you interrupt them. So this is how you interrupt them. You say, just a minute, hold on just 1 second. You said something really important there, and I don't want to forget what I was going to, and it reminded me of this, what I was going to ask you. And then you ask whatever the next question is, or you repeat the question again, or you ask whatever you want to ask to get them back on course. So it's really important that you take control, that you don't let them, and that you have a really good sense of your timing. Because if you let the conversation go on and on and on, and oh my God, I've sat through so many of these calls, and believe me, I used to let that happen to me too. But I've sat through so many of my clients' calls that are just nonsense. Like, they're just going on and on, and they have no idea that they're not answering the question. The client is confused. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go to next. And like, they're trying to get something out of what the person is saying, but you have to just yank control back, and you have to say, just hold on. You're saying something so important right there. Let me just ask you this, because then they know that what they're saying has value, but you're trying to understand something so that you can actually give them the right response and the right package or whatever it is that you're trying to sell them to help them with. So hopefully, and of course, never leave without another meeting, and never leave without, even if they don't know the time and the date, never leave without a time and a date to get the time and the date. So get a meeting to get a meeting, right? I'll call you. I know you don't have the time. You don't know the other people's schedules, but is it okay if I check in with you Monday at noon to see if you've been, able to get a date, kind of thing? Now, if they say no, it's a no. You can't really do anything except follow up how you normally would have with the email and phone. But it's worth asking. And there's so many people who just don't even do that. So those are some of the ways that you need to take control of the sales conversation. And when you do all the things that I'm saying, not in a rude way, not in a harsh way, ever, but when you truly have their interest at heart, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get enough information from them so that you can formulate a program recommendation that will help them. And you're also trying to clarify for them what, once they answer clearly and think about all of these strategic, really macro questions that relate to their business, and hopefully they're at the level of seniority to know and understand all the implications and the actual information that you're asking them, then you're in the right position to be able to have a shared strategic conversation at a level that they can speak to. And most decision makers that are making decisions at corporations for multiple 6 figures have to have enough seniority to be able to answer what their vision is around the problem that this spend is going to solve and what's kept them, what the actual hurdle or the friction is, and then to be able to answer what is the cost that it's costing both the company and them. So stick to the script, plan it out properly, set it up properly, and make sure that you do your follow through and follow up, and then close like, butter. Close like a pro, because don't let it get away from you. All right. I hope that was helpful. I hope that gives you confidence when next you walk into your corporate sales meeting. And I will see you next week. Take care.